We gather here not merely to discuss scandal as though it were a passing amusement, a fleeting story upon which the newspapers feed. No, scandal is far older than the newspaper. It is older than gossip at the marketplace, older than the whispers around the communal fire. Scandal is a psychological archetype clothed in the garments of society, an expression of something buried deep within our collective shadow. We imagine that we hunger for scandal because we are curious about others, because we wish to be entertained by the downfall of the mighty or the shame of the neighbor. Yet the truth is darker, and therefore more illuminating. We are addicted to scandal because it mirrors the denied parts of ourselves, the hidden recesses of our own psyche that long for recognition, even in distorted form. When you look at a scandal, when your eyes widen at the fall of a celebrity or your ears perk at the betrayal within your community, what is it that truly excites you? It is not only the event itself, it is the stirring of your unconscious. The human being is fascinated by scandal because it touches the archetype of the fall. This archetype, stretching back to Adam and Eve, to Icarus, to Lucifer, cast from heaven, is embedded in our psychic DNA. The fall is both terrifying and intoxicating. We watch another fall so that we might taste vicariously the forbidden fruit of our own impulses without paying the full price ourselves. This is why scandal consumes us, why entire industries thrive on its repetition, why entire epochs in history are marked not by invention or triumph, but by disgrace. But scandal is not merely about others. Every time you consume scandal, you are secretly engaging with your own shadow. The shadow is that part of you which holds all that you repress, all that you deny, all that you dare not reveal even to yourself, the greedy impulse, the lustful thought, the jealous resentment. These are exiled from the conscious personality because your ego insists on being good, moral, clean. Yet what you reject does not vanish. It waits in the unconscious, in the labyrinths, beneath your feet, where it festers and grows. And so, when you see someone else act out the forbidden, when you watch another be exposed in scandal, you experience both condemnation and fascination. You condemn them outwardly because your ego must protect itself from association, but inwardly you are fascinated because the scandal provides a mirror to your disowned self. This is why scandal has such magnetic power. It is never neutral. It draws you in with the intensity of a dream. Think of the last scandal that captured your attention. Was it not like a dream in which you played no part? And yet every symbol seemed to reach into your soul. In this way, scandal is a collective dream. It is the unconscious speaking, but not in the privacy of your sleep, in the daylight of society. It is a dream enacted upon the stage of the world, and like all dreams, it demands interpretation, not dismissal. The modern person imagines themselves free of myth, yet myth erupts through scandal with ruthless regularity. The scandal of the politician is not merely about money or power. It is the archetype of the corrupt king, the ruler who betrays the sacred trust. The scandal of the celebrity is not simply about private misdeeds. It is the archetype of the fallen idol. the golden calf shattered before the eyes of the people, and even the scandal of the neighbor, the whispered affair, or the shameful secret echoes the archetype of exile, of the scapegoat driven into the wilderness, so the community may feel pure again. Why are we addicted? Because these myths feed the psyche like fire feeds upon wood. The unconscious yearns to see its symbols enacted, to be confronted with the truth of humanity's complexity. Yet there is danger here, for addiction is not merely interest, it is compulsion. When scandal becomes addiction, it signals that the shadow has gained mastery over the ego. You no longer witness scandal as an archetypal drama, you devour it compulsively, like one who cannot resist the forbidden fruit. And in that compulsion, you are enslaved. Imagine a dream in which you stand before a crowd and suddenly your secret is revealed. The crowd gasps. You feel the heat of their eyes upon you. Shame burns your flesh. You wake in a sweat. Such dreams are common, for they reveal a universal fear, the exposure of the shadow. Scandal is this dream made public. We are terrified of it, yet we are enthralled by it. We dread being the one exposed, yet we cannot look away when it happens to others. Do you see the paradox? What we dread most and what we desire most are intertwined. This paradox is the source of our addiction. In ancient rituals, the community would project its sins onto a sacrificial animal or a chosen victim, the scapegoat, and drive it away, believing their guilt had been removed. Scandal serves the same psychic function today. The community projects its shadow onto the scandalized individual. They are corrupt, not us. They are immoral, not us. They are shameful, not us. By devouring the scandal, by collectively condemning the fallen, we attempt to cleanse ourselves. Yet this cleansing is never complete, because the shadow remains within us. Thus, the cycle repeats. Another scandal must emerge, another victim must fall, and again we feed upon it, addicted to the ritual of projection. But if you listen carefully, beneath the frenzy of scandal lies the whisper of the unconscious. It says, look at this and see yourself. Do not waste your gaze on condemnation. See in the fallen one a mirror of your own fallibility. This is the deeper invitation. Scandal can either enslave us in addiction or awaken us to self-knowledge. The choice is whether you project or reflect. When I speak of scandal as archetype, I do not speak of morality in the conventional sense. I am not asking whether the fallen one is guilty or innocent. That is the concern of courts and tribunals. I speak of scandal as symbol, as psychic drama. The fascination we feel is not legal but existential. It stirs us because it reveals the fragility of our personas. Each of us wears a mask, a carefully constructed image presented to the world. This mask is necessary, for society cannot function without roles. But the mask is never the whole truth. Scandal rips away the mask of another, and in that ripping, we feel the trembling of our own. Why do you think you cannot look away? Because you fear that your own mask might be torn, that the shadow you conceal might be exposed. The addictiveness of scandal is born of this double motion condemnation of the other and fear of the self. And yet, in this very addiction lies an opportunity. The psyche does not bring us fascination without purpose. When scandal captivates you, ask, what in this story reflects my own hidden nature? What in this fall resonates with the secret within me? If you dare to ask, you will transform scandal from mere entertainment into a mirror of individuation. Individuation, the process by which you become whole, always demands that you confront the shadow, and scandal, when interpreted symbolically, offers you just such a confrontation. Consider the dream of a woman who sees her neighbor, a pious and upright figure, suddenly stripped naked before the village. She wakes with horror, but also with excitement. What does this dream reveal? That the unconscious longs to unmask the false piety within herself, to confront the naked truth beneath her own moral persona. Now replace the dream with the scandal of the neighbor in waking life, and you see the same pattern. The scandal outside reflects the scandal within. Do you see? Then why scandal is not trivial? It is the raw material of transformation. To be addicted to scandal without reflection is to remain trapped in the cycle of projection and shame. But to interpret scandal as symbol is to take a step toward integration, toward wholeness. This is the dark truth. We are addicted to scandal because it speaks to the deepest structures of our psyche, the shadow, the archetype of the fall, the fear of exposure, the longing for cleansing, the drama of the mask and the true self. It is not news, it is not gossip, it is myth enacted in the theater of the collective. And myth cannot be dismissed, for it is the language of the soul. When we look deeper into this phenomenon, we must understand that scandal is not simply an external spectacle. It is an eruption of psychic content into the collective. We live in an age that flatters itself with rationalism and progress, but beneath the surface, the ancient gods are not dead. They return in new guises. They appear in the scandals that grip society, because myth, when repressed, does not vanish, it mutates. And so the archetypes of betrayal, fall, lust, pride, and shame return on the stage of the public square. It is as if the unconscious, tired of being ignored, insists on being seen, even if the only language available is the collapse of another human being in full view of the masses. The addiction to scandal cannot be separated from the psychology of envy. Envy is one of the most insidious forces of the human soul, for it corrodes silently. When someone rises above us, whether through beauty, wealth, power, or creativity, the shadow within us begins to stir. We admire them consciously, but unconsciously we feel resentment. This resentment, repressed, waits like a coiled serpent, and when scandal erupts, when the admired figure is brought low, the serpent of envy uncoils with glee. We rejoice at their fall, because their downfall temporarily relieves us of our inferiority. This is why people say that nothing tastes sweeter than the fall of the great. It is not sweetness at all, but the bitter triumph of envy disguised as justice. But envy is never satisfied. Once it has consumed one victim, it demands another, and thus the addiction continues. We believe we are watching stories of other people, but in reality, We are feeding the endless hunger of our own shadow. The shadow delights in scandal because it confirms its cynical belief that everyone is secretly corrupt, that no one is truly good, that all light hides darkness. By consuming scandal compulsively, you allow your shadow to speak louder than your higher self. You reinforce the belief that life is nothing more than a theater of hypocrisy and exposure. And yet, paradoxically, scandal has the power to awaken us to the truth of wholeness. For no human being is without shadow. To be human is to be torn between light and darkness, between the persona and the forbidden impulses beneath. When you see another fall, you are reminded of your own precariousness. It is not a lesson in superiority, but in humility. The proper response to scandal is not mockery, but self-reflection. There, but for the grace of God, or the grace of my own repression go I. The unconscious thrives on paradox. You are simultaneously horrified by scandal and intoxicated by it. You despise the corruption of others, yet you are drawn to witness it. You condemn the immoral act, yet you secretly imagine what it would feel like to transgress. This paradox is the heart of addiction. What you consciously reject and what you unconsciously desire collide in scandal, and the result is obsession. You cannot stop thinking about it, because it contains both attraction and repulsion. It is like the moth drawn to the flame, knowing it will be burned, but unable to resist. Let me share with you an image from a dream reported by a patient. The patient dreamt of walking through a great cathedral where a magnificent statue of a saint stood high above the altar. Suddenly, the statue cracked and fell, shattering upon the floor. The congregation gasped. Some screamed, some cheered. The dreamer awoke with terror, but also exhilaration. What does this mean? The saint represents the idealized image, the perfect projection of virtue. The fall of the statue represents the collapse of an ideal, the exposure of imperfection, and the mixed response of the congregation mirrors the psyche itself, horror at the destruction of the ideal and secret delight at its collapse. This dream is scandal in symbolic form, and so when we consume scandal in waking life, we are living out the same drama that dreams present in symbolic language. Society itself dreams through scandal. What the individual sees in sleep, the collective sees in scandal. The scandal of one man's corruption or one woman's betrayal is not only about them, it is about us all. It is a dream we share together, revealing what we refuse to face alone. That is why scandal spreads so quickly, like wildfire. It is not simply the efficiency of communication, it is the psychic hunger of the collective unconscious pulling the story into every corner. Every conversation, every whisper. Do not think this is a modern sickness. Ancient Rome feasted upon scandal with as much zeal as modern tabloids. The gladiatorial games themselves were public scandals, ritualized the exposure of human weakness, the spectacle of blood, the catharsis of shame projected onto the defeated. Medieval villagers whispered about the sins of their priests and nobles. Scandal is as old as civilization, because civilization always demands repression, and what is repressed always seeks return. But what does this mean for you? If you wish to understand yourself, you must recognize your fascination with scandal as a call from your unconscious. The psyche never wastes energy. If you are drawn compulsively towards scandal, it is not random. It is because some disowned aspect of you is crying for recognition. Perhaps you despise the corruption of the politician because you deny your own hunger for power. Perhaps you condemn the infidelity of the celebrity because you repress your own fantasies of freedom. Perhaps you scorn the hypocrisy of the preacher because you secretly battle with your own double life. Whatever it is, the scandal you cannot stop watching reveals the scandal you have not yet faced within yourself. The path of individuation requires courage to confront these truths. Individuation is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. To become whole, you must integrate the shadow, and scandal is one of the mirrors the unconscious uses to show you your shadow. The question is whether you will look deeply or remain on the surface. If you remain on the surface, you will continue to feed on scandal like an addict, gaining nothing but temporary relief. If you look deeply, you will see yourself, and in seeing yourself, you will gain freedom. Now consider the archetype of the trickster. The trickster is always at the heart of scandal. Loki, in the Norse myths, Hermes in the Greek, the coyote in Native American tales, all are archetypes of scandal. They break rules, disrupt order, mock authority, and expose hypocrisy. And though they bring chaos, they also bring truth. The trickster reveals the shadow of the community by embodying it. When you laugh at the trickster's mischief, you are laughing at your own hidden impulses. Scandal is the trickster alive in our world. It unsettles, it disrupts, it exposes, but it also teaches. The addiction to scandal then is partly the addiction to the trickster archetype. We long for disruption because our souls tire of order. Too much order suffocates us. Scandal breaks the rigid structures, even if by destructive means. We are addicted because the psyche craves balance, and scandal provides the chaos needed to counterbalance sterile order. The danger is that instead of learning from the trickster, we become enslaved to him. We consume scandal endlessly without integrating its lesson. Think of the fire that both warms and burns. Scandal is such a fire. Used wisely, it illuminates the shadow, warms the cold ego with humility, and lights the path of self-reflection. Consumed compulsively, it burns away integrity, leaving only cynicism and despair. The difference lies not in the scandal itself, but in your relation to it. Let me tell you another dream. A man dreams he is at a banquet. The table is laden with food, but all of it is rotten. The guests eat greedily, laughing and gossiping. Though the stench is unbearable, he feels both disgusted and compelled to join. He wakes nauseated. This is the image of scandal consumption. The banquet is society's feast of scandal. The food is rotten because what we consume is the decay of others' lives. Yet we eat it with laughter because it feeds some deep hunger in us. The dream reveals the psychic sickness of scandal addiction, feeding upon rot, while imagining it nourishes us. Do you see then why I call this the dark truth? Because the addiction is not about morality or even curiosity. It is about the archetypal hunger of the shadow. the envy of the human soul, the trickster's disruption, the collective's need for ritual cleansing, and the unconscious demand for confrontation, scandal will never disappear, because it is not an accident of society but a manifestation of the psyche. The only choice you have is whether to be enslaved to it or transformed by it. If we dare to trace the roots of scandal deeper, we must recognize that it is not only an outer drama or a personal fascination, but a ritual enacted unconsciously by society. Every scandal resembles an initiation rite, though inverted. In the ancient mystery traditions, the initiate would be stripped of their old identity, plunged into darkness, and then reborn with new vision. In scandal, the victim too is stripped, exposed, thrown into darkness. But without the conscious frame of initiation, it is an initiation distorted into punishment, and yet, even in this distortion, something archetypal shines through. For what happens to one in public, the many undergo vicariously in private. We are all participants in the initiation. When scandal unfolds before our eyes, the psyche is always teaching. It uses dreams, symbols, accidents, symptoms, and yes, even scandals, to teach what we refuse to learn consciously. Why do we return again and again to these stories of disgrace? Because there is something in them that we need to digest. Though we resist, the more we resist, the more compulsive the return becomes. Addiction is always a sign of unintegrated material. The drug of scandal is only necessary because the lesson it carries has not been integrated. Imagine a mirror placed suddenly before you, but the mirror does not show your face as you know it. It reveals instead your hidden impulses, your unspoken desires, your denied corruptions. Most would turn away in horror. Scandal is precisely such a mirror, but projected outward. You see another's corruption, another's secret, another's downfall, and you tell yourself, this is not me. Yet, why then do you return to the mirror? Why do you stare so intently? Because some part of you knows it is indeed you, at least in potential, at least in shadow. We like to imagine that scandal reveals the weakness of others, but scandal, in truth, reveals the vulnerability of all masks. Persona is fragile. Every mask eventually cracks. Every carefully constructed image must one day confront the unconscious material beneath it. Scandal dramatizes this inevitability. And so we consume it obsessively, not because it tells us about the other, but because it warns us about ourselves. The addiction also springs from the archetype of taboo. What is forbidden exerts fascination. We are drawn to look precisely where we are told not to look. In every culture, the forbidden becomes sacred in reverse. To transgress is to touch a kind of negative divinity. Scandal embodies this forbidden quality. It is the revelation of what should have remained hidden, the tearing aside of veils. To look upon it is to risk contamination. Yet the risk itself seduces. The human soul cannot resist the forbidden, for the forbidden is the threshold of the unconscious. I recall a dream of a woman who found herself in a vast library. On the highest shelf she saw a book bound in black, glowing faintly, which she knew she was forbidden to touch. She felt terror, yet also an irresistible pull. She climbed, trembling, took the book and opened it. The pages were mirrors. She saw her own face, but twisted into countless expressions she had never seen. She awoke with both dread and exhilaration. That dream is the essence of scandal, the forbidden book, the irresistible pull, the mirror of disowned faces. This is what scandal offers us. It is why we are addicted, for in scandal, the psyche whispers, "Here lies what you hide. Look," but the conscious mind resists. It says, "That is not me. That is them. That is the sinner, the hypocrite, the fraud, the fallen one. I am righteous because I am not like them." In this way, scandal becomes projection. Projection is one of the most powerful dynamics of the psyche. What you cannot face in yourself, you project upon another. The scandalized individual becomes the canvas upon which you paint your shadow. You accuse them of corruption so that you may maintain your illusion of purity. You denounce their weakness so that you may avoid confronting your own. This is why scandal feels so cleansing in the moment. It is as if the poison within has been expelled, but only by placing it upon another. Yet, projection never brings true healing, because the shadow remains unintegrated. It is merely displaced, and so the addiction continues. Do you see the cycle? First, repression, you deny your forbidden impulses. Second, projection, you encounter these impulses in the scandal of another. Third, condemnation, you release your shame by condemning them. Fourth, temporary relief, you feel purified, but only for a moment. Then the hunger returns, and another scandal must be found. This is the ritual of addiction. It is a shadow sacrament that binds the soul instead of liberating it. But what if you dare to break the cycle? What if, instead of projecting, you reflect it? When you feel the pull of scandal, ask yourself, what does this reveal about my own shadow? What impulse within me resonates with what I see? If you can answer honestly, you transform scandal from poison into medicine. You begin the process of individuation. For individuation requires nothing less than the courageous encounter with the shadow. The collective too might learn this lesson. Imagine if, instead of consuming scandal with glee, is society ask itself, what in us has produced this? What does this fall reveal about our culture, our values, our hidden desires? Then scandal would cease to be merely an addiction and become a revelation. But such maturity is rare, for it demands collective self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is the rarest commodity. Let us also consider the archetype of the sacrifice. In scandal, the fallen individual becomes a kind of sacrificial victim. They are cast out, condemned, humiliated, so that the community may feel pure. This is the scapegoat mechanism. The scandalized person carries the sins of the group and is symbolically destroyed. The addiction arises because the community feels a false relief in this sacrifice. But the relief never lasts, because the sin is not truly removed. It lives on in the hearts of the people. And so another victim must be chosen, another scandal must arise. This endless cycle is not unlike an unconscious liturgy. Repeated without understanding, and yet within the sacrifice lies a hidden wisdom. For sacrifice in its true form is not about destruction, but transformation. To sacrifice is to make sacred. If scandal could be seen not as the destruction of another, but as the unveiling of truth within ourselves, then the addiction would dissolve, and in its place would come insight. This is why I say scandal can either enslave or liberate. The same fire that burns can also illumine. The choice lies in your consciousness. The addiction to scandal also reveals the hunger of the soul for story. Modern life has stripped us of myth, of ritual, of the great narratives that once gave meaning to existence. And so the unconscious creates its own myths in the form of scandal. Each scandal is a modern morality play with heroes, villains, faults, betrayals, punishments. We are addicted not only to the content, but to the narrative structure itself. It is myth disguised as gossip. To consume scandal is to consume story, and story is the lifeblood of the soul. But again, the question is whether you consume unconsciously or whether you interpret. To interpret is to awaken. Consider the archetype of the shadow double. In many myths, the hero encounters a double, an enemy, who mirrors his own qualities twisted in darkness. This double must be faced, for in defeating or reconciling with the double, the hero integrates his own hidden aspects. Scandal functions as such, a double for society. The scandalized individual is the shadow double of the collective. Society condemns them as alien, yet secretly recognizes itself in them. That is why scandal grips us. It is our shadow double calling for integration. I must warn you, however, that the addiction to scandal, if left unchecked, leads to cynicism. Cynicism is a sickness of the soul that believes all light is false. All virtue is hypocrisy. All beauty is corruption, waiting to be revealed. This is the ultimate triumph of the shadow. When it is not integrated, you begin to see the world only through scandal, unable to believe in goodness, incapable of trust. Addiction to scandal, then, is not harmless entertainment. It is a spiritual danger. It corrodes faith in humanity, faith in oneself. But I return to the paradox, for in the same addiction lies the possibility of awakening. If you can see scandal not as proof of universal corruption, but as revelation of universal humanity, you will transform your relationship to it. You will see in the fall of another not a cause for mockery, but a mirror of your own vulnerability. You will recognize that within you too lies corruption and virtue, light and darkness, capacity for betrayal and capacity for truth. In that recognition, compassion is born, and compassion is the antidote to addiction. For where addiction feeds upon shadow with greed, compassion transforms shadow with love. There is another layer, perhaps the most unsettling of all, that explains why scandal binds us so deeply. It is the archetype of the fall from paradise. Humanity has carried this story since the dawn of self-awareness. In every myth, In every tradition, there is the memory of innocence lost, of purity shattered, of a secret disobedience that changed everything. Adam and Eve tasting the forbidden fruit, suddenly new shame. Icarus soaring too close to the sun, suddenly plunged to his death. The gods themselves, in many myths, are not free from scandal, for their passions and betrayals mirror our own. To be human is to fall, and every scandal we witness is a reenactment of this primordial fall. We cannot look away because we are watching our own story retold. Again and again, the addiction to scandal is, therefore, not simply a matter of moral weakness, but of existential memory. We are addicted because we are remembering every time we watch someone else fall. We are reliving our own expulsion from the garden, our own loss of innocence. We are both horrified and fascinated because we are touching the deepest wound of the human psyche. And this is why scandal is never trivial. You may think you are gossiping about a neighbor, laughing at a politician, mocking a celebrity, but beneath the surface, you are engaging in a ritual older than civilization, the ritual of the fall. The psyche repeats it compulsively because the wound of exile has not been healed. Addiction is always the symptom of an unhealed wound. We are addicted to scandal because we have not reconciled with our own fall, but reconciliation is possible. The path of individuation invites us to embrace the shadow, to integrate the fall, to recognize that we are not gods untouched by corruption, nor demons defined only by shame, but whole beings who contain both. If you can hold this paradox within yourself, light and darkness, virtue and vice, innocence and fallenness, then scandal loses its compulsive grip. You will still see it, still recognize it, but you will no longer be enslaved to it. You will see the scandalized individual not as scapegoat, but as mirror, not as entertainment, but as symbol. And in that recognition, you will take a step toward wholeness. Consider again the dream of exposure, where you stand naked before a crowd. In the nightmare, you are consumed by shame. But imagine if in the dream you were to say, yes, this is me. I am not only my mask, I am also my shadow. In that moment, the shame would transform into strength. You would no longer fear exposure, for you would have exposed yourself willingly. This is the secret. Hidden within scandal, the way out of addiction is not more repression, but radical self-acceptance. When society learns this, scandal itself will change. It will no longer be a feast of destruction, but an opportunity for healing. Imagine a community that responds to scandal not with ridicule and exile, but with reflection and integration. Instead of tearing down the fallen, it asks, what does this reveal about us all? Such a society would no longer be addicted, because it would no longer need projection. It would know that the darkness of one is the darkness of all, and therefore also the possibility of transformation for all. But I must speak plainly, we are far from such maturity. The present age thrives on addiction. Scandal fuels economies, drive politics, entertains the restless masses. Entire empires of media are built upon the endless repetition of scandal. And the danger is that in feeding endlessly on the downfall of others, We lose touch with our own inner lives. We become spectators of corruption rather than seekers of wholeness. The soul withers when it consumes only the shadow of others, and yet, even here, the unconscious is at work. For if we are addicted, it is because the unconscious insists upon being seen. The more we resist, the louder it becomes. Perhaps the very saturation of scandal in our time is the psyche's desperate attempt to awaken us. We are flooded with exposure not to destroy us, but to break through our denial. The unconscious is shouting, "You cannot avoid the shadow forever. It will return again and again until you integrate it." Therefore, let us not despise our fascination with scandal, but let us not remain enslaved to it either. Let us take it as a signal, a summons. The scandal outside points to the scandal within. The exposure of another invites us to expose ourselves not to the public, but to our own consciousness, to look in the mirror and say, I too contain corruption. I too am capable of betrayal. I too wear a mask. And yet I am more than these things, for I am whole. This is the alchemy of individuation. The lead of scandal becomes the gold of self-knowledge. If we are willing to pass through the fire of reflection, the fire burns. Yes, but it also purifies. Every scandal is such a fire. The question is whether you are consumed by it or transformed through it. I leave you with this image, a torch held in the night. Its flame reveals both the beauty of the path and the shadows that dance along the walls. Without the torch, you stumble in darkness. With the torch, you see both light and shadow. Scandal is such a torch. If you use it unconsciously, you will stare only at the shadows and forget the path. But if you hold it with awareness, it will guide you deeper into the mystery of your own soul. The dark truth about our addiction to scandal is not that we are wicked for enjoying it, but that we are unconscious of why it is not wickedness that binds us, but ignorance. The cure is not moral superiority, but knowledge. To know that every scandal is an image of your own shadow is to break the spell of addiction. To integrate that shadow is to find freedom, and in that freedom, you no longer hunger for the downfall of others, because you have reconciled with the fall within yourself. This is the path of wholeness, the path the unconscious always calls us toward. Scandal is but one of its voices, dark and disruptive, but also full of meaning. Hear it, and you will awaken. Ignore it, and you will remain addicted, chasing the fall of others while denying your own. The choice, as always, is yours.